I still remember the smell of fresh bread and the hum of fluorescent lights that filled the supermarket where I worked as a cashier. It was a typical Saturday morning, with shoppers milling about, filling their carts with the week's groceries. I had worked at this supermarket for 3 years, and it had become a second home to me. I knew most of the customers by name, and they knew me. I took pride in my work, always making sure to scan their items quickly and efficiently, with a friendly smile and a kind word. But on that particular Saturday, my world came crashing down. My manager, a tall, thin woman with a perpetual scowl, called me into her office. I had seen her talking to the district manager earlier, their voices hushed and their eyes glancing in my direction. I had a feeling something was off, but I had no idea what was coming. "Emily," she said, her voice firm but with a hint of disdain, "we have a problem. We've had several complaints from customers about your appearance. They say you're unprofessional, that you don't look like someone they want to interact with when they're shopping." I felt a stinging sensation in my eyes, a hint of tears welling up. I knew I was heavier than some of my colleagues, but I had never thought it would be a problem. I was a good worker, efficient and friendly. I didn't see how my weight had anything to do with my job. "I'm sorry," I muttered, trying to hold back the tears. "I'll try to do better." But my manager just shook her head. "It's not about doing better, Emily. It's about fitting the image we want to project. Unfortunately, we've decided to let you go." The words hit me like a slap. I felt a wave of humiliation wash over me, followed by a deep sadness. I had loved my job, and now it was being taken away from me because of my weight. I didn't know how I would face the customers, my colleagues, or even myself. As I left the office, my head held high despite the tears streaming down my face. I saw the district manager watching me, a smug look on his face. I knew then that I had been fired not because I was a bad worker, but because I didn't fit the narrow and discriminatory standard of beauty they had set. The feeling of humiliation stayed with me for days, even weeks. I couldn't bear to leave the house, afraid of what people would say or think. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, something inside me began to stir. A spark of anger, a flame of determination. I would not let this experience define me. I would rise above it, and I would make sure that no one else ever had to go through what I had gone through. But for now, the question remained: how would I recover from this humiliating experience? I trudged through the streets, my feet aching from hours of walking. My last interview had been a disaster. The look on the manager's face had said it all. I couldn't even make it through the conversation without being dismissed. The memory of being fired from my job as a cashier still lingered, but this latest rejection stung even more. It had been weeks since I'd lost my job, and I was starting to feel like I'd never find another one. Every place I applied to seemed to be looking for someone with a more presentable image, and my weight was always the elephant in the room. I began to wonder if I was even employable. Was I destined to be a social outcast, never fit to work alongside normal people? I walked for what felt like hours, eventually finding myself back in front of my small apartment. The mailbox was stuffed with unopened envelopes, bills, and rejection letters from all the places I'd applied to. I didn't have the strength to face them. I collapsed onto the couch, surrounded by the fragments of my shattered self-confidence. Weight had always been an issue for me, but it had never defined me. Now it seemed like it was all anyone could see. Even I couldn't look past it anymore. I stared blankly at the TV, wondering what I was supposed to do now. The uncertainty was suffocating me, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly hopeless. Days blended together, and I lost track of time. The phone stopped ringing, and the knocks on the door from packages became the only sound that broke the silence. I was slipping into a dark hole, and I didn't know if I had the strength to climb back out. It was as if I'd lost my sense of purpose, like I'd become a ghost of my former self. And then, one day, something inside of me snapped. As I stared into the mirror, I saw a person I barely recognized. My eyes had lost their sparkle, and my smile seemed like a distant memory. I had two choices: let the world break me, or fight back with every fiber of my being. But how? As I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by the familiar comforts of my favorite foods and worn-out couch, I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness wash over me. The pain of being fired from my job as a cashier still lingered, a constant reminder that I wasn't good enough. The weight of my obesity seemed to bear down on me, making every step, every breath, a chore. But on this particular day, something was different. Maybe it was the way the sunlight filtered through the grimy windows, casting a warm glow over the room. Or maybe it was the sound of my stomach growling, a reminder that I needed to get out and face the world. Whatever it was, I knew I needed a change. That's when I remembered Sarah, a friend from high school who had always been the picture of health and wellness. We had lost touch over the years, but I had heard through the grapevine that she was now working as a personal trainer at a local gym. On a whim, I decided to reach out to her, hoping that she might be able to offer some guidance. As we met at the gym, I was immediately struck by Sarah's infectious energy. She had this way of moving that was both confident and effortless, like she was gliding across the floor rather than walking. We sat down on a bench, and she listened intently as I poured out my story, the struggles, the shame, the fears. She didn't judge me or try to offer quick fixes. She simply listened, her eyes filled with compassion. And then, in a moment that would change everything, she asked me a simple question. "What do you want for your life?" It was a question that no one had ever asked me before, at least not in a way that felt genuine. I thought about all the things I had been told I should want: a skinny body, a lucrative job, a perfect family. But as I looked deep within myself, I realized that what I truly wanted was to feel alive. With Sarah's help, I began to take small steps towards that goal. We started with short walks around the block, gradually increasing the distance as I grew stronger. We worked on meal planning, finding healthy alternatives to the processed foods that had been my staple for so long. And for the first time in years, I started to feel a sense of purpose. As I looked in the mirror, I saw a glimmer of the person I used to be, the person I wanted to be. It was a small spark, but it was enough to keep me going. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but with Sarah by my side, I felt like anything was possible. And so, with a newfound sense of determination, I stepped out into the world, ready to face whatever came next. Little did I know my journey was only just beginning. As I sat at home, feeling sorry for myself after being fired from my job as a cashier, something inside of me clicked. I realized that I had been given a rare opportunity to reevaluate my life and pursue a new path. With her newfound motivation, I began to explore different interests and hobbies, searching for something that truly resonated with me. It wasn't until I stumbled upon a business book that I had borrowed from the library that I discovered my true passion. I spent hours devouring every word, learning about entrepreneurship, marketing, and finance. The more I read, the more I became captivated by the idea of building something from scratch. I started to envision myself as a business owner, creating a successful company that would bring value to my community. The thought sent shivers down my spine, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose. As I delved deeper into the world of business, I began to develop a plan to turn my passion into a career. I spent countless hours researching, taking online courses, and attending seminars. I learned about the different aspects of running a business, from accounting to human resources. I was determined to soak up as much knowledge as possible, knowing that this would be the foundation of my future success. With each passing day, my excitement grew. I could see myself running a successful business, one that would not only bring me financial stability, but also allow me to make a positive impact on the world. The thought of being my own boss, of creating something from scratch, and of inspiring others was exhilarating. But as with any new venture, doubts began to creep in. What if I failed? What if I wasn't good enough? What if I didn't have the resources or the expertise? These questions lingered in the back of my mind, threatening to undermine my confidence. Yet I refused to let fear hold me back. I pushed forward, driven by a newfound sense of determination. And so, I continued to work tirelessly, pouring my heart and soul into my business plan. I could feel the momentum building, and I knew that I was on the cusp of something extraordinary. The question was, would my passion for business lead to success? Only time would tell, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. I still remember the countless nights I spent poring over business textbooks and seeking advice from mentors, as I refined my plan to take over the supermarket chain that once so callously discarded me. It was a daunting task, but with each passing day, my determination only grew stronger. I could almost taste the sweet victory of returning to that very same store, not as an employee, but as the owner. As I delved deeper into the world of business, I encountered an array of characters who would shape my journey. There were the trusted allies who believed in my vision and offered invaluable guidance, and the adversaries who sought to undermine my efforts at every turn. I recall one particularly grueling meeting in a sterile boardroom, where a skeptical investor grilled me relentlessly, questioning my ability to succeed in such a competitive industry. I listened attentively to his concerns, my mind racing with counter-arguments and contingency plans. But despite the obstacles, I remained resolute, driven by the memory of that fateful day when I was so cruelly fired. The pain and humiliation still lingered, but I channeled those emotions into fuel for my crusade. With every setback, I adjusted my strategy, honing my approach and forging new alliances. My days became a blur of meetings, presentations, and phone calls as I tirelessly worked to bring my vision to life. And then, just when I thought I had finally made progress, a new hurdle would emerge. A rival bidder would express interest in the supermarket chain, threatening to derail my plans. Or a crucial partner would express doubts about my leadership abilities. But I refused to be discouraged, drawing on every ounce of resilience and cunning to outmaneuver my opponents. With each passing week, my business plan began to take shape, a comprehensive roadmap for turning my dream into reality. I could see the finish line on the horizon, and with it, the satisfaction of triumphing over those who had once written me off. The question now was, could I overcome the remaining obstacles in my path and claim victory? Only time would tell. As I sat in the conference room, surrounded by lawyers and financial advisors, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. After months of planning and negotiations, I had finally done it. I had purchased the supermarket chain where I was once fired for my obesity. The same chain where I was humiliated and belittled in front of customers and colleagues alike. The same chain where I was told I wasn't good enough, simply because of my weight. As I signed the final documents, a sense of pride and accomplishment washed over me. I had come a long way since those dark days, and now I was the one in control. I was the owner, the boss, the one calling the shots. But as I walked into the supermarket, I was met with a mixture of emotions. Some employees looked at me with curiosity, others with suspicion. My former colleagues, the ones who had witnessed my humiliation firsthand, looked at me with a mix of shock and resentment. One of them, a woman who had been a cashier alongside me all those years ago, approached me with a scowl on her face. "So, you're the new owner," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I never thought I'd see the day." I smiled sweetly, determined not to let her get under my skin. "Yes, I am," I replied, my voice firm but friendly, "and I'm looking forward to making some changes around here." The woman snorted, rolling her eyes. "I'm sure you are," she muttered, before turning and walking away. I watched her go, a sense of unease settling in my stomach. I knew it wouldn't be easy, taking over a company where I had such a fraught history. But I was determined to prove myself, to show everyone that I was more than capable of running this supermarket chain. As I began to make my way around the store, shaking hands and introducing myself to employees, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. This was just the beginning, the start of a new chapter in my life, and I was ready for whatever challenges came my way. But little did I know, the real challenges were only just beginning. As I settled into my new role, I would face resistance and opposition at every turn. From employees who didn't want to take orders from me, to suppliers who questioned my abilities, I would have to navigate a complex web of power dynamics and workplace politics. And as I stood there, smiling and confident, I couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Would I be able to overcome the obstacles and prove myself as a capable leader? Or would I falter and let my doubts and fears consume me? Only time would tell. As I stood in the headquarters of the supermarket chain I now owned, I couldn't help but think of the girl I used to be. The one who felt so small and insignificant behind the cash register, who was belittled and humiliated by her manager and peers. But that was a lifetime ago. Today, I was the boss. My first order of business was to transform the toxic workplace culture that had destroyed my confidence and self-worth. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to make a change. I called a meeting with all of the managers and department heads, and I laid out my vision. "We're going to do things differently from now on," I said, my voice firm but filled with conviction. "We're going to prioritize diversity and inclusion, and we're going to create a safe and welcoming environment for every single employee, regardless of their size, shape, color, or creed." The room was silent for a moment, and I could sense the resistance. But I didn't back down. I shared my own story and the struggles I had faced as an obese employee in this very same company. I told them about the humiliation, the shame, and the isolation. And I told them that I refused to let anyone else go through what I had gone through. Slowly but surely, the room began to nod in agreement. They saw the fire in my eyes, and they knew that I was not to be underestimated. Together, we started to brainstorm ways to promote diversity and inclusion, to fight against weight-based discrimination, and to create a workplace culture that was truly supportive and empowering. We implemented new policies and procedures, ones that protected employees from harassment and bullying. We provided training on bias and inclusion, and we encouraged employees to speak up if they saw or experienced anything that made them uncomfortable. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but slowly the culture of the company began to shift. Employees started to feel more confident and empowered, and the entire atmosphere of the workplace began to change. As the months went by, I received countless messages from employees who were grateful for the changes I had made. They told me that they felt seen and heard, that they felt valued and respected, and they thanked me for being a leader who truly cared about their well-being. I smiled as I read the messages, knowing that I had made a real difference. But I also knew that our work was far from over. We still had a long way to go, and there would be challenges ahead. As I looked out at the supermarket chain I now owned, I knew that I had a unique opportunity to make a lasting impact. I was determined to use my position to fight for social responsibility and leadership, to show the world that business could be done differently. But would my efforts lead to lasting change? Only time would tell. I still remember the day I was fired from my job as a cashier like it was yesterday. The humiliation, the shame, the feeling of being worthless, it all came flooding back as I stood outside the very same supermarket, now as the owner of the entire chain. The automatic sliding doors parted and I stepped inside, taking in the familiar sights and sounds of the store. But this time it was different. This time I was in control. I made my way to the management office, knowing that the man who fired me all those years ago was still working there. As I entered the office, he looked up from his desk, and our eyes met for the first time in years. He seemed taken aback, unsure of how to react. I, on the other hand, felt a sense of calm, of closure. I had come full circle, and it was time to show him just how far I had come. "Hello," I said, a smile spreading across my face. "I see you're still here." He stuttered a greeting, and I could tell he was trying to process what was happening. "I must say I'm a bit surprised," I continued. "I didn't think you'd still be working here after all these years." He tried to speak, to apologize, but I cut him off. "No need to apologize," I said. "What you did to me all those years ago turned out to be a blessing in disguise. It pushed me to work harder, to pursue my dreams, and to become the person I am today." I walked over to the window and looked out at the bustling store below. "You see, I'm not just a former employee who's come back to visit. I'm the new owner of this supermarket chain." The look on his face was priceless shock, amazement, and a hint of regret. I turned back to him, my eyes locked on his. "I want you to know that I've forgiven you. I've moved on and I'm happy, but I also want you to know that I've come full circle. I've achieved my dreams, and I'm living proof that success is not defined by one's weight or appearance." He looked at me, and for a moment I saw a glimmer of understanding. He realized that he had been wrong to judge me, to fire me because of my weight. And in that moment, I felt a sense of vindication, of closure. I had finally put the past behind me, and I was ready to move on to the next chapter of my life. But was I truly ready to let go of the past, or was there still a part of me that held on to the pain and the hurt? Only time would tell. I stood outside the sliding glass doors of my supermarket, gazing out at the bustling parking lot. It was hard to believe how far I'd come. After confronting her past, I thought I'd finally found closure, but it was only the beginning. The journey I'd been on had changed me in ways I never thought possible. I'd grown, not just as a person, but as a businesswoman. And it was surreal to think that the girl who was once fired from a cash register now owned the entire supermarket chain. As I walked back inside, the fluorescent lights overhead seemed to shine brighter, illuminating the aisles and shelves that were once a source of shame and embarrassment for me. Now they represented a new chapter in my life, one of success and redemption. I thought about all the people who had doubted me, who had seen me as nothing more than a struggling, obese girl, and I smiled. I had proved them all wrong. I wandered through the store, taking in the sights and sounds of the bustling supermarket. Customers milled about, filling their carts with groceries and chatting with the friendly staff. I stopped in front of the cash register where it all began, and for a moment I was transported back to that fateful day. But the pain and humiliation were gone, replaced by a sense of pride and accomplishment. I thought about the journey I'd taken, the struggles I'd faced, and the growth I'd experienced. It had been a long and winding road, but it had led me to this moment, and I was grateful for every step of it. I realized that I had been given a rare gift, the chance to rewrite my own story, to turn a painful and embarrassing experience into a triumph. As I stood there, lost in thought, a customer approached me, smiling. "Excuse me," she said. "I just wanted to tell you how much I love shopping here. The staff is always so friendly, and the prices are amazing." I beamed with pride, feeling a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment that I'd never known before. "Thank you," I said, shaking her hand. "That means a lot to me. I'm the owner, and I'm glad to hear that we're doing something right." The woman's eyes widened in surprise, and she congratulated me on my success. As we parted ways, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. What's next for me? I thought, a thrill of excitement running through my veins. The possibilities were endless, and I was eager to find out. As I stood in my office, looking out over the vast empire I had built, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. It had been a long and difficult journey, but I had finally made it to the top. I was now the owner of the very same supermarket chain where I had been so cruelly fired all those years ago. I thought back to that day, and how it had felt like my world was crashing down around me. I had been so humiliated and ashamed, and I had wondered if I would ever be able to show my face in public again. But I had refused to give up. I had used that experience as fuel to drive me forward, to push me to succeed. And now, here I was, in a position to help others who may be struggling with similar issues. I had come full circle, and it felt amazing. I thought about all the people who had helped me along the way, who had believed in me and supported me even when I didn't believe in myself. And I knew that I wanted to pay it forward, to help others in the same way that I had been helped. I started by implementing policies in my stores that would help people who were struggling with obesity and other health issues. I made sure that we had healthy options available, and that our employees were trained to be supportive and understanding. I also started a foundation to help people who were struggling with body image issues, and to provide resources and support for those who were going through difficult times. As I looked out over my empire, I knew that I had made a difference. I had taken something that had once been a source of pain and shame, and I had turned it into something positive. I had come full circle, and I was proud of what I had accomplished. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but I was excited for the journey ahead. I was excited to see what the future held, and to know that I would be able to make a difference in the lives of others.